Hello. In this lesson, we're going to go ahead and adjust our render settings a bit, and then we are going to go ahead and learn how to add reflections to some of our basic materials, okay? So if you want to follow along, you can go to Eames Apply for Vray Rendering Start, and we can keep on keeping on, okay? So go ahead and make sure that your asset editor is open, and if it's not open, you can click on this little round V here, okay? And then I want you to zip over here to the fourth one under Settings. Go ahead and click on this little triangle that says render. Okay. Now, in my case, I have a GPU, a graphics processing unit, right? An external graphics card that you can see here. And what I'm doing is I'm asking Vray to use that for my rendering. Okay. And that will take a little bit of the strain off of my actual machine. Okay. And another thing that I've done is I've set this to draft quality. Okay, right now it's not actually active because it's not switched, and it has to be inactive for you to change the quality, right? So when we want to sell our design, we might want to crank it over here to very high, but in our case, I'm just going to move it over to draft because I want to be going really, really quickly, right? You also have the option to go CPU, and then you can decide whether you want it to be interactive or progressive. Okay, but I'm just going to move it over to my graphics processor, leave it on draft, and then go ahead and click it to be active. Okay, and that's going to allow me to make things happen much, much quicker, because you'll find that as you add reflections to your materials, it's really, really, really going to slow things down. And if you're trying to use the interactive render like we typically do, it's going to make things really rough. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to double click on the top. I'm going to go to my perspective. Okay, and as you can see, I've got my transparent objects. All right, and what I've done is we look over here in the render, I've actually added another thing called blue ground, and I've applied that to my infinite ground plane. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and start an interactive render, and you can see there it is. I've got my ground plane is now blue. All right, and my transparent objects are right here. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a couple things. Number one, you'll notice that you can't tell, but my ground plane is on layer 2, which is locked. Okay, I'm going to unlock that just to prove a point here. You'll notice that I can select my ground plane, right? And I'm going to hit escape to deselect it, and I'm going to lock that layer. And now you notice I can't select it. Okay, I'm going to bring my asset editor back up, and I'm also going to bring up my render. Okay, so I'm going to move this over here, move my asset editor over here, and now I'm going to run over to my materials, and right here where it says blue ground, which is what has been applied to the ground plane, I want you to notice that even if your layer that your object is on is locked, you can still get in there, and I'm just going to change this to green, yellow. You can still get in there and change the properties of a locked object or a locked layer just by going back and changing the color. All right. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to make this a baby blue again, just like that. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the reflection of my blue layer. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here. All right. So I'm going to go ahead, click on my reflection, which is on, right? And right now my reflection color is black. If I change that color to something that's white, it's going to become, and you can see it here, more reflective, right? As I begin to zip on in here, you'll notice that that color between gray, black, white, and gray actually increases and decreases the reflection, right? Now, I can also choose to highlight the glossiness of it, and then that makes things a little bit glossier. And you'll notice that now, as I rotate, it's taking just a little bit longer and a little bit longer to re-render or to render in real time. All right. Now, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mess with the, this is the Fresnel, right? And what the Fresnel does is the Fresnel will show you these white, white, white patches, right? So right now it's on. Right? And watch this. If I click the Fresnel index of refraction, I want you to watch these little highlights on the corner of this. And if you can't see it on your screen, go ahead and do it on your own. But as I click the Fresnel IOR, the index of refraction, which is currently at 1.6, if I click on that, you'll notice that this got a little shinier, and it also got a little bit shinier over here. All right, we're not going to see any Fresnel on this floor. And the reason for that is this floor doesn't really have any corners or too many highlights. So I'm going to go ahead and uncheck that. Okay. And then I'm going to zoom back here a little bit. All right. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to minimize this for just a second. And I'm going to go up to my text tool, and we're just going to type reflect, and we're going to hit OK, and we're going to put this right here. All right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to make some reflective colors. Okay. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate my blue ground, duplicate my green. I'm not duplicating any of the transparent ones. I'm going to duplicate my orange, and I'm going to duplicate my red. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, zip back to up top, and we're going to start to make some reflections. All right, so I'm going to click on the blue ground, right? And I'm going to change this to something a little bit bluer. There we go. And I'm going to click on here and add a reflection to it. Right. Oh, it's actually it already is reflection because it's the blue ground. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that as really reflective. Okay. Now I'm going to go to my, actually I'm going to click on this and apply that material to that selection. Let's go ahead and take a look at our rendering. So there you can see there's the R. I'm going to zoom on in here. I'm going to try and make these R's and E's a little bit more reflective, right? Now let's go ahead and let's do the E. I'm going to select the E. And this time I'm going to go down to my red. Red number 1. Go to the reflection. Right now it's black. I'm going to make the red really reflective. Okay. And then I'm going to right click on that and apply to the selection. Right. And now as you can see, we're starting to get reflections of the blue in the red, right? And the longer it takes to render, and here's those reflections right here, the more reflections you have in there, the longer it's going to take to render. Okay. Now, if I come over here, if I uncheck the Fresnel, you'll see this little highlights here will disappear a little bit, right? And it'll just become absolutely 100% reflective. So you'll lose the highlights, but you'll get it really, really reflective, right? 99% of all objects, you want the Fresnel on there. Okay, we'll talk about which ones don't need Fresnel later, right? And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on this guy, the reflection index of refraction, okay? The index of refraction basically has to do with, it's a numeric value, and that numeric value has to do with whatever material it is that you're trying to create, right? So the IOR, the index of refraction of air, is typically 0, right? Index of a diamond is like 2.4, right? So if I wanted this to look like a diamond, I could, well, I just took it up to 4.4, and that's all right. And you'll notice that you'll get more and more reflection the higher that number goes, right? So 3.7, that's like red chrome, right? It'll go all the way up to 25, which is basically a red mirror, right? So you can really, really see, and you can barely see that there's any red in there, right? You can also change the color of the reflection, right? So I can say I want it to be green. I want green reflecting into red. And I can go ahead and close it, right? So now you can see I've got something blue, it's reflecting into the red, but it's looking green, right? Now, one thing you really need to be leery of is these reflections can really, really, and very, very easily wash out a scene, okay? So people like reflections, they think they're cool, but like I said, they can really, really wash out a scene very, very quickly, very, very easily, right? Now, we learned this a little bit, especially with the, you'll see me do this light blue floor trick quite a bit because a light blue reflective floor, and let's go ahead and jump up here to the blue ground again, and let's make this really, really reflective. Click on the IOR, and then crank that up And you'll notice, and I'll take the Fresnel off, right? It will really, really start to wash out a scene. It's not too bad right now, but you can see this blue, whoop, really, really starting to change things. Okay, so you have to be very, very careful about that. Right now we don't have too many lights in here. We just have a directional light. If I had a few artificial lights, then all of these reflections would really, really start bouncing off everywhere, and whoop, and it would be kind of mayhem. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop the rendering right now, stop the video right now, and I will see you in the next lesson. Take care.